Hi everyone, I'm Nikki. I'm the founder of Be Your Best Yet Life Improvement Coaching, and I wanted to share this video with you in relation to how, much to my surprise, by reducing the amount of alcohol that I drank, how I increased my happiness. I'm recording this video just before New Year's Eve in 2020, which for a lot of us has been an awfully interesting year. And I've drunk the least alcohol in 2020 that I have in, I don't know, 25 years probably. And what's really interesting is that I feel better than I ever have done. And I wanted to share that because there might be some people out there that are interested in my story, and I just want to clarify before I go into what I'm going to talk about today. I am not for one moment suggesting that anybody needs to change their relationship with alcohol. I am in no judgment of anybody. For years, I was not interested in drinking less, and I'll go on to explain what my levels of normal drinking alcohol were. But I think there are some people that perhaps have thought about maybe they want to drink less, but they're not sure, they're worried about social pressures. And so I thought it might just be of interest to share my experience. So what I'm going to do is start by talking about the fact that how I started drinking and a bit about my journey with alcohol. Then I'm going to go on to talk about why and when I decided that I thought about changing my relationship with alcohol. I'll talk a little bit about how I did it, and then I'm going to share what the benefits are in addition to what I've already mentioned, which is basically just feeling happier. So I started drinking at around 14, which I'm not proud of, but it is a fact. I lived in a fairly sleepy Northamptonshire village, and there was a group of people that just on a weekend would be drinking Strongbow cider or Lambrusco fizzy wine, and just getting a little bit tipsy. And it was basically a social thing, and it seemed fun. And pretty much from then I got the taste of alcohol and kind of carried on drinking. When I went to sixth form college, when I went off to university, I was very much though like a social drinker. So it would be like a go out to the pub or go to a party or whatever the case may be and drink. And it was very much about, going out to get drunk, just was the way that it was. I never had a problem with alcohol as far as I was concerned. I didn't drink at home particularly. Sometimes we'd drink before we went out on a night out, but it was very much about going out to drink. Into my 20s, when I started my career, I was very similar, still going out quite a lot, work dues as well. I would drink sometimes with a bit of a binge drinking, so a bit of a heavy night, but again, nothing out of the ordinary. Still didn't really drink very much at home, very much a social drinker, and similar into my late 20s and early 30s. In my 30s, when I probably was going out a little bit less, I would drink at home. Again, not anything to excess. So probably in my 30s and early 40s, sharing a few bottles of wine a week with my husband would be fairly normal. Definitely wasn't getting drunk, but just, enjoying alcohol with a meal or just relaxing on a Friday night, that kind of thing. And definitely in my tricky, stressful role, I had a job that was very difficult for about 5 years. Alcohol was kind of I say a coping mechanism, but basically it was a release. So it wasn't like I was drinking to cope with work, but I would very much come home at the end of a long day, as a lot of people do, and have a few glasses of wine to take the edge off. And really that was just kind of the norm for me. So it was probably about just under 2 years ago that I decided that I might want to think about changing my relationship with alcohol. And for a while, I'd been thinking about it. And that was because I noticed, and at this point, I was probably drinking 3 or 4 times a week, maybe 3 to 4 glasses of wine at a time, that on a morning I would wake up and I would very often think one of two things. Either, oh, I'm really glad I didn't have a drink last night, or, oh, I really wish I hadn't had a drink last night. And it was kind of the first waking thought of the day, which was kind of, I realised was a little bit odd, but that was just what was happening. And as I came out of a winter a couple of years ago, I'm an amateur horse rider, and I was feeling a little bit heavier than I wanted to feel. I was active, I was riding, I have my horses at home, so I was looking after them, being active, doing that. But I just felt a bit heavier, and it kind of dawned on me that probably alcohol was adding unnecessary calories. And although I didn't feel particularly at the time that I was lacking energy, because I felt a little bit heavy, there was a knock-on effect that I can see with the benefit of hindsight. So I kind of decided, it was maybe early spring, late winter, that I was going to look to change my relationship with alcohol. And it was really about changing the habit. So what I decided to do was attempt, and it wasn't like a hard and fast rule, but try out basically like a bit of an experiment, not drinking at home unless it was a special occasion or we had people over. So only drinking when I was out, or if we had something going on at home, it was a special occasion. And it was really interesting because I consciously didn't want to go down the I'm going to be teetotal. And I also should say at this point that I'm absolutely not teetotal, and I don't intend to be teetotal. But this was about changing my relationship with alcohol. What I did was, that season we were doing a lot of stay away shows, and I decided to stop taking alcohol with us to the stay away shows. And that meant I woke up feeling refreshed. And just to clarify, drinking alcohol, I would have had maybe 2 to 3 glasses the night before. So it wasn't like I was having a skinful and getting rolling drunk, but the difference between having 2 to 3 glasses and having none was quite vast. I noticed that I slept better, which was good, so I felt refreshed. And then it just started to become well, this is fine, I don't need to drink alcohol. And over time, and it didn't happen like straight away, but I started to notice that because I wasn't drinking at home, I'd broken the habit, and therefore Friday would come round and I wouldn't have opened a bottle of wine, and therefore it wasn't a problem. And like I say, I really noticed that I was sleeping a lot better and feeling a lot better in myself. So I was happy with that. I didn't have any long-term plans about what it meant. I was just kind of going with what was going on. In May, so this is about 18 months ago now, I went to an international competition, my first one, and I drank very little, even though it was very sociable, because I wanted to be on form, and it was enough pressure on me with being at my first international show. And whilst I had a break between classes, I happened to see something on Facebook that was aimed at people that were wanting to reduce, actually, I think people that were wanting to become sober, which was never my intention. But I read it anyway. And a couple of the tips I used, they talk a lot about the witching hour, which is basically the time with which you would normally open a bottle of wine, and then to resist that urge. And for me, I'd always been fine if I hadn't had a drink by about 8 o'clock at night. I was never going to bother opening a bottle of wine at that stage. But between kind of 6 and half 7, I was always a little bit vulnerable, I suppose, to kind of the habit of having a glass of wine. So the tips that I read in this article that I found on Facebook were, at that point, to have a soft drink, something that you enjoy the taste of, because often the theory is that we're craving sugar rather than actually alcohol, and therefore having a soft drink that we enjoy would take away that craving. So I did that for a little bit. And the other bit of advice along a similar line was to have something to eat at that point, maybe just a little snack, because again, it's the habit of actually consuming something rather than the alcohol itself. So I did that for a while. And again, I continued to just feel the benefits, and just slowly but surely, really without me realizing, I just found like alcohol was just no longer becoming a kind of factor or a consideration, which honestly was a surprise to me, because previously, come say a Friday night, it would be a question of, were we going to open red wine or rosé wine, not were we going to have wine full stop. And that was kind of an interesting thing for me. So we're now just before New Year's Eve 2020, and like I said, it's been a difficult year for many people, and an unsettling year for sure. And I've drank less alcohol than I have in any of the years previously, and I honestly feel amazing for it. So I mentioned right at the outset that one of the benefits is that I feel happier, and I just want to kind of share why I think that is in a moment. But the other benefits are I'm just much calmer. I've got much more even moods. And I'll share why I believe that's the case from all that I've learnt in the work that I've done on mindset for my business in the previous years. Fundamentally, though, and it's kind of hard to describe, because as an example, 2.5, 3 years ago, I met somebody over here just in passing, and we happened to go for a drink. There was a group of us, and she said, "Oh, I'll just have a soft drink. I don't drink." And I remember I said to her, "Really? Wow, how come?" And she was like, "Well, I'm just really not bothered, and I'm quite into my fitness, and I'm it's not a big deal for me." And I was really shocked, and I just didn't really know people that didn't drink. So it was a surprise to me to feel the benefits that I have. So not only do I feel happier and feel calmer, I'm able to take on good habits and easily. So essentially, when I was drinking, I would always get the munchies. So I'd always eat things that I, wouldn't have eaten if I hadn't have been drinking alcohol. I would often feel tired the next day and probably a little bit grumpy. So if something would happen, like, I don't know, the horses have broken a fence or something, it would be a much more emotional reaction that I would have to that situation. Whereas now it's like, oh, the horses have broken the fence, great, got to sort it out. But there's no drama attached to it. I'm much more patient with my husband. I just feel lighter about life. And when things happen that are unexpected, rather than it being kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I'm able to calmly, confidently, and kind of just go, oh, okay, well, that's not great. What am I going to do about it? Whereas previously, it would automatically trigger me to be in a frustrated frame of mind, probably have an emotional reaction, which would have a knock-on effect. And so I just am very surprised, and I can't explain all that easily how much of a surprise it is to me that I feel as good as I do. And I think the reason for that is I realise now, looking back, that I didn't feel great when I was drinking. But I put that down to either being tired or just being busy or just feeling stressed. What I recognise now to be the case is that all of those emotions largely are as a result of the impact that alcohol was having on my body. I stress again, I'm not suggesting for one moment that anybody needs to change their relationship with alcohol unless they want to. But for me, it's been a real eye-opener. And just as an example, in lockdown, the first lockdown that we had back in March, April, I started running. Often one good habit breeds another, which I know from the work that I do in my business. And I don't think I would have started running had I still been drinking. But not only did I start running, I really enjoyed it and I've kept it up. And I'm really in a position now, and this is another really good byproduct of not drinking, I'm able to make positive choices to be more organized because I have the energy. If I have a spare hour, rather than sitting down with a glass of wine or spending it on social media, I will either go for a run, or I'll go and do some batch cooking, or I'm much less likely to focus on anything that's difficult and have the negative thoughts that come along with that. And what I wanted to share is through the work that I do with clients, which is around improving their mindset to improve their life, the brain is biased towards negativity. It's to do with survival. It's been the case for years. So we are automatically wired to think more negatively. That's just the way that it is. The impact that alcohol can have on our likelihood to add negativity in there is absolutely huge. The other thing that alcohol can do, which makes a really big difference, is it impacts the quality of our sleep. And for me, I suspect that's been the biggest game changer. I've always slept well as far as I thought, but I no longer have the slumps at various points during the day where I need to have, I don't know, a coffee or some chocolate or something to pick me up. The relationship between alcohol and anxiety is huge, hence why I feel so much calmer. I've never been diagnosed with any sort of anxiety disorder, but I do know that I have suffered and struggled with anxious thoughts and negative thoughts and a negative mindset historically, and I just don't have that now. So the link between anxiety and alcohol is huge. Anybody that's had a huge night out and then had hangover anxiety the next day will know what I'm talking about. It also goes on for days and weeks after that as well. The other thing as well, though, is that the deep quality sleep that we need to clear out the toxins in our body is impacted by alcohol, and therefore things remain in our system that wouldn't when we don't drink. And I believe there's a huge link for me as to why I feel so much better. So again, the link between lack of quality sleep and anxiety is huge. So whilst I'm absolutely not saying anybody needs to change their relationship with alcohol if they don't want to, I totally appreciate everybody's in different place and has different desires. If you struggle with anxiety and you drink regularly, there could very easily be a correlation, and it would be worth considering having a thought about whether you want to reduce your alcohol intake. It definitely was a habit for me. I changed the habit of Friday, Saturday, Sunday just drinking to not, and now it's not even an issue. We didn't have any alcohol this Christmas. Our wedding anniversary is a week before Christmas. We opened a bottle of wine, we had a glass and a half each, and the rest went in the chilli because we just weren't bothered. Now, when we get back into being allowed to see people again, there will for sure be times that I will want to go and have a glass of something with somebody, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I absolutely will. The big difference, and I have seen friends this year when lockdowns have allowed, and I have had a drink or two, but generally I'll have 1, 2 max and I'm done, because I'm consciously drinking rather than just drinking out of habit. And the fact that I no longer have the situation with, oh, am I going to drive? Is my husband going to drive? All of those logistics. The difference really is huge. So I just wanted to share that with you. I have worked with a client actually a few months ago who recognised that anxiety that she was struggling with was very likely exacerbated by alcohol. And we went through a process to look into her subconscious programming and change it so she was able to more easily change the habit. And I caught up with her a couple of days ago, and she hasn't felt the urge to drink over Christmas whatsoever. Historically, she did and would then end up feeling anxious, and she's just changed the parameters. And interestingly, I think it was back in the summer when I had the session with her, it was right before she was going on a 2-week holiday with quite a big group of people, and I said, are you sure this is the right time? There's lots of people going to be drinking, if you want to do it after the holiday, that's fine. And she was like, no, I'm ready. It's my anniversary while I'm away, so I'm happy to have a glass of wine, but I don't want to be a habitual drinker anymore. We had the session. She went on a 2-week holiday, just had a glass of wine on her anniversary, wasn't tempted, wasn't bothered. So if it's something that you're interested in, or you'd like some support with your anxiety, then definitely get in touch via my website, which is beyourbestjet.co.uk. I hope you found this interesting. I really wanted just to share with you my own experience. It's been a revelation, honestly. And like I said, I never intend to be teetotal, but similarly, I never intend to go back to habitual drinking either. So I just wanted to share that with you all. Take care.